to what will be a perfectly normally joyous episode of Behind the Glass Sports. I'm Aiden Dolan, joined as always by Hardy Graham. Mr. W.B. Miller is having some connectivity issues in Tuscaloosa. I think it's because it pours and it's already raining, and everyone is using all the bandwidth at his apartment complex to bitch and moan on Twitter. Not going to get him very far, and not all that justified in the opinion of this program tonight.
No, the bitching and moaning will not get them very far. They could have bitched and moaned at other points in the season when they lost to 6-6 football teams. Right now, you just got to suck it up, and hey, you get a revenge match against a Michigan team that beat you last year. Now it is missing its head coach and the number one running back and the quarterback that beat you. It's not remotely the same caliber of team, but you do get the chance to play them again in the Reliant Quest Bowl down there in Tampa. Hopefully Jalen Milroe will not put on a classic Jameis Winston style performance with the Tampa air, coming in and out of his lungs. Hopefully it will. I don't want to say hopefully, but it is likely to be his last game as the quarterback at the University of Alabama. I don't expect him to come back. I think he'll either go to the draft or transfer, something, who knows. But, you wake up this morning and everything that could have went right last week. The Crimson Tide got in, was like number 11 in the rankings, and, still number 11 in the rankings today. They have not moved whatsoever, but the luck that they got last week, they did not get this weekend. The SMU Mustangs could not hold off a last-second field goal from the Clemson Tigers. Both teams end up getting in. Aiden, do you think that – I don't want to say the teams that deserved to get in got in, because I couldn't really tell you which team was the final team that was the most deserving to get in. But do you think just in general the committee did a fair job in who they decided to put into the college football playoff?
Yeah, I really do. I do think they did a fair job. Now, me personally, I don't think teams 9 through 12 deserve to get in at all because, as I've said from the beginning, and we'll be continuing to say, 12 teams is too many. You cannot convince me there are 12 teams that deserve to compete for a national championship. And Exhibit A is, the fan base is having the conversation that it's having today. And Clemson, because of an automatic qualifier, gets in. That part's probably a little sticky too. But at the same time, you got to reward being a conference champion. And I'm sorry, folks, did you really want the committee to put the nail in the coffin and make conference championship games the equivalent of the Reliant Quest Bowl? Did you really want them to do that?
Or
it's really
outright,
short-sighted.
Yeah, or just outright eliminate some of these conference championship games and just do it where you're the regular season champ and however many conference games you win. And if you end up having the same conference record as someone, it comes down to about 20 different tiebreakers to determine who ultimately claims the crown. But I would agree with you. If SMU was in the field, they lost in their conference championship game to a Clemson team that has talent. No one is ever
has a damn good coaching staff.
Yeah, has a coach that has won some national titles, has been to even more of them, has been to the college football playoff. If you're looking for even an at-large bid consideration for a team like Clemson, everything on paper looked good, and yet they didn't even have to do that. They went into Charlotte, took care of their business, and now they will, I believe, be the 12 seed, so they will head to South Bend, if I'm not mistaken.
You are mistaken. They are going to Austin, Texas.
Oh, they are going to Austin. Okay. Well,
yeah, they're going to get steamrolled.
Yeah. Very fair chance. I think, just looking at the playoff bracket, the top half of the bracket is like really loaded. You have Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee, Oregon all sitting up there. And at the bottom of the bracket, you have, the Boise States, Arizona States, Georgia, a Penn State team that is always seems to, float around the 9 or 10 mark in the rankings and has 2 losses to the good teams in the Big Ten, just like they do every season.
And played some damn good football.
They played really well against Oregon last night. I will give them that. Drew Aller had probably his best game of the season, but they still lost.
They lost.
James Franklin hasn't won I don't think he's won a top 10 game since 2018 or something. Like maybe like it's one of his first 2 seasons at Penn State. As upset as I can be that Alabama was left out of this college football playoff, the teams that did get in, you can look at strength schedule, all that stuff. They didn't blow games to bad teams. That is the conversation that we were having today. If you want to sit here and talk about the what if, like who would be favored, like the better Vegas odds, who would make for a more compelling game. Sure, Alabama has one of the highest ceilings in the entire country, but we've also seen that the floor is rock bottom, scoring 3 points against an Oklahoma team that just pretty much had them mapped out from the first snap. But did they really deserve to get in? The biggest argument for Alabama to get in was wins against current, AP or playoff top 25 teams. There is some kind of, arbitrary stuff that goes into that. Like how much better is a 9-3 Missouri team than a 9-3 Duke team that is outside of the AP top 25? That's kind of the conversations we're having, and I think they're pretty comparable. Alabama got a pretty good break playing Mizzou. Drew Pine pretty much played that entire game. Got really lucky to get out of the game against South Carolina with a win. The weather conditions down there in Baton Rouge pretty much played perfectly to how we like to play football this season. And even
and by the way, Wisconsin. Let's not ignore the fact that Wisconsin's starting quarterback got knocked out on the first or second
drive of the game.
There you go. How do you look against 5-7 Wisconsin with their starting allegedly top 10 portal prospect quarterback?
Yeah, it could be a very different game, and they were moving down the field with him in. Obviously, you look at the final score, took care of business. But even some of the weaker non-conference opponents, Western Kentucky, they could never get into the end zone, but they were driving down the field pretty consistently in that first half. It took us 3 quarters to finally get things moving against USF. You can sit here and talk about this Alabama team as one of the best teams, one of the best 12 teams in college football. I'm not even really so sure that's the case. They have those ranked wins, but I've watched every game this season, just as I imagine every other Alabama fan has, and they have not looked like a national championship level team. They got bailed out a couple of times with the other teams at the top of the rankings losing to keep them into the playoff picture, but now you get left out and you just have to suck it up and, like you said, just buy your tickets to the ReliaQuest Bowl, go cheer them on and try to get a win over the Big Blue.
And I want to go back to the strength of record, strength of schedule argument. I'm a little embarrassed that Greg Byrne put out the statement that he did. There's this screenshot that popped up in the old Tide Insurance chat of him getting community noted on Twitter, X, Musk's platform of demagoguery. You didn't have a strong non-conference schedule this year, Greg Byrne.
No.
You didn't take care of your business as a football team. We need to, we need to not be looking at other people's plates right now. We need to be looking at our own. All right. And talking about ranked wins is important. It's absolutely important. But I think what you said just now is more important. These other teams that they put in didn't have ghastly losses. For teams in the top 25, I'm not sure that there was a worse loss than Alabama's loss to Oklahoma where the offense looked like a glorified JV football squad from Maine against
glorified would be putting it nicely.
yes,
It just looked
and
it looked like your
3
average like
points.
run of the mill. Yeah. No, it
3
was
points.
atrocious.
The Thompson Warriors put up more points against Oklahoma than
Yes.
Alabama did in that game. All right? Guaranteed. Even with that 8th grader slinging the rock all over the field. I guess he's probably a sophomore by now. But
yeah, probably.
I
But
digress. Two of the worst losses in top 25 football this year. Maybe not so much Vanderbilt, but you definitely had one of the worst showings in top 25 football against USF. Your defense took half a season to get going, although it's the back half of the season that matters. You know, we talk about you can look hell in the first 6 weeks as long as you're playing your best ball in the last 6 weeks. That wasn't the case because the offense couldn't hold up its end of the bargain. We talk about, you know, you kind of caught yourself there at the beginning of your diatribe saying like, well, no, maybe not. Hopefully it's Jalen Milroe's last game as the quarterback of the Crimson Tide. No, hopefully, dude hasn't progressed.
Dude held the
back. Dude gave Nick Sheridan about as much to work with as Kane Womack's little tiny defensive 3x5 index card. All right. And a guy like Brent Venables knows that. And he schemes for it. And you didn't play Pete Golding this year. And you didn't have to play Texas A&M this year. And you didn't.
And you played and even LSU, you know, argued like the best win that we have on the road this season. Their defense is atrocious. Like they were not good. I mean, you know,
they can't tackle.
A 6-6 USC team gashed them the entire season. I mean, they've, you know, lost other games. DJ Lightweight pieced them up, you know, took care of business, this, that, the other. I mean, we're like, what are we talking? And to get back to the strength of schedule stuff, I mean, look, a lot of people are sitting here arguing, you know, well, it's about the future potential of like, you know, making your path more difficult. If you want to be a championship team, look at what Nate Oates is doing with the basketball program. He is, with regularity, scheduling the toughest schedule in the entire country. And yes, you do get more leeway with basketball, but you could lose.
It's a field of 64.
But if you go back and look at the, you know, however many like past 10 years of the college football playoff rankings, there are multiple 3-loss teams in the college football playoff rankings in the top 12 every single season. With, you know, the expanded conferences and stuff, more teams are probably going to end up, you know, happening to play I don't want to say a fodder schedule, but a fodder schedule.
There's also going to be more teams that end up playing a very tough schedule any given year. The way it's going to shake out is your school's best year in a 5-year window might be the year that you have to play 5 of the top 7 teams in the Big Ten or the SEC. And that's just the way the ball bounces. Show up, look at what's on your plate, and consume it.
Yeah. The Georgia Bulldogs, you know, right now, perfect example. You know, they have 2 losses. They lost to 2 teams sitting inside the top 15 right now. They played Clemson week 1, put the work in on them, beat a really good Tennessee team, the team that I think now with Carson Beck's injury, and we'll see how much that actually impacts them. But I think they're going to go up to the Horseshoe and beat Ohio State and have a real shot to win the national championship because their defense is really good.
And they're going to control the time of possession in that game without any issue.
Yeah, and so, you know, you're just looking at this kind of, you know, arbitrary thing where you're like, well, we don't want to risk playing, you know, good teams because we might lose. Like, dude, they've been scheduling cupcake games for the past 12 seasons. At least, you know, you play 8 conference games every year. You know, that is a given. It's the SEC. It's tough. But if you're going to lose a SEC game, lose to one of the better teams in the conference, lose the Tennessee loss, that's fine. Don't lose to Vanderbilt, Oklahoma.
Have we brought that up? Have we brought up the Tennessee loss tonight? No, we haven't. There's a reason.
No. If you had not lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt and had gone on the road and lost to LSU, I really wouldn't be batting an eye. But to do that is just a completely, you know, different type of thing. You you're every season right now, you're scheduled to play teams that are absolute cupcake bye games. You've been doing it forever. Every year you seem to schedule one solid, um, and you schedule all these like 10 years in advance. So you don't know how good the team is going to be 10 years in advance. But in the next couple of years, so next season they're at Florida State and then they get Wisconsin at home. Hopefully Florida State's better. Um, if you if you are
Kind of hard to
so
be
afraid,
worse.
yeah, if you are so afraid of losing a game at Florida State after the season that they just had, because you're afraid it'll affect your playoff rankings, you are a coward. Um, go into their building and beat them. The year after that, at West Virginia and in Florida State, like these aren't like huge games until
We're not
2027.
talking about lining up to play Dan Lanning every season.
Yeah, I mean 2027 they go in 2028 they have uh, Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Ohio State, and then 2029, 2030 they played Notre Dame. That's a 4-year window. Those are tough games, but they're home and homes. You'll get to play you'll get to play both of those teams at home at least one of those times. It's good for the programs, good for the fans, good for recruiting to get kids
Everyone's
into the
looking
building
forward
for
to it.
that game. Yeah, it's something that
And by the
draws
way, in
attention.
the NIL era, you want the boosters to open their pocketbook? Go win that game.
Yeah,
Go get the boosters liquored up in the away
go win
box
a
and go win that game. They're going to open the checkbook, sign it, and
yes.
hand it to you with nothing written on the amount line.
Yeah, you go out there, play a top 5 or I'm sure top 10 Notre Dame Ohio State team, get the win. If you lose, and again, if you lose one of those games, your season's not over. You could still lose a game in the SEC and make the conference championship and win it, or even in some cases you could make the conference championship, lose it, and still probably get in. Your season's not immediately over because you lose a tough non-conference game to a quality opponent. And like we just kind of went through on this list, most of these power conference opponents aren't very good. I mean, looking even further ahead, 2031, you get Georgia Tech, Boston College, 32, Arizona, Minnesota, back-to-back years, and then Virginia Tech,
Why have
Boston
I
College.
seen us play Mercer 3 times since my freshman year?
Yeah,
Why?
these are not you're not playing the cream of the crop in these
No.
teams. I mean, what, and it is worse for you if you schedule a Northern Illinois, and if you get upset, that is an immediate, and thankfully, well, for Notre Dame's sake, they didn't lose any other games this season. Whatever they beat.
Damn,
Ranked
it's
Army
almost
team.
like they played like hell, lost to a team that was way inferior, and they treated it like a wake-up call, changed their approach, and started playing better football instead of taking more pictures under some cool lights with recruits.
Yeah. So, just looking at how things are right now, if you want to call this retribution for Alabama knocking Florida State out of last year's college football playoff, after I still think they deserve to get in, being undefeated and still taking care of business against a ranked Louisville team in their conference championship. Yes, it wasn't Georgia, and Alabama lost to Michigan anyways. So if you want to poo-poo on that argument, you can go ahead. But just really looking at the team that we saw this year, there was some good, a lot of bad, and if Kalen DeBoer wants to continue to build this program, be successful, and he has been a successful head coach everywhere that he's been, getting into the college football playoff next season is a must, or fans might start giving him the Brian Kelly treatment. like Brian Kelly's getting at LSU right now, where they're looking at it and saying, we might just have to flat out buy this guy out. I don't think it'll happen after 2 years. If he, for whatever reason, doesn't make it after 3 years, very serious conversations will be had. But it's a tough it's a tough job following up.
Maybe it depends
After the
more
game
on
of
if
college
his
football.
players are, openly disrespecting and yelling at him on the sideline, or, if he's verbally
Yeah, if
abusing wide
if
receivers.
and I don't think he's like
Maybe
yeah, I don't think he's lost control of the locker room or whatever. Like people are going to see transfers leaving the program. It's just the new era of college football. Like don't think anything of it. Guys that were underutilized this season are looking for better opportunities elsewhere. Kendrick Law being the primary example, a guy that was super dynamic 2 seasons ago, and this season was just, or I guess last season, this season just has not done, hasn't been utilized in this new offensive scheme for one reason or another. Most of these guys, wish them the best. Hope that their future football program, actually uses them, develops them into the players and the young men that they want to be.
Yeah, and you always got to hope that you always let's never lose sight of these are kids, these are young adults carving out their role in the world and figuring out the person they are going to be and what they're going to contribute to humanity. And if that's going to be playing football, great. But again, let's remind ourselves, for the vast majority of them, everything that happens on the football field and on the practice field is a lesson to be taken into another career path where they will make contributions to humanity. And we want to send the best young men out into the community as possible upon graduation, regardless of whether that graduation is at the University of Alabama. Let's not lose sight of that. That being said, Hardy, I'm going to go ahead and take the hardline stance. I'm glad they didn't make it. I'd rather this scenario where they didn't make it than if they did, because if they did make it, sort of like the way we saw all season, where despite playing below their potential, despite playing below the standard, despite behaving on the field below the standard, despite the flippancy of the answers to media questions from both players and coaches, and the dismissiveness to legitimate criticism by the leaders on this team. They still had things happening above them. The churn was enough that they were in the conversation, in the picture, and so nothing changed. There was no growth. No one ever hit the panic button and said, like Marcus Freeman did in South Bend this year. And you know how much I hate giving the gold helmets credit. They never
I can't stand it either. But he's done a really good job this season.
Exactly. They got lacrosse players lining up at wide receiver, scoring touchdowns. Multiple. There's not one. There's multiple. Okay, let's be clear here. I'm glad they didn't make it, because I think if they had the wholesale change, maybe not wholesale, but the drastic changes to maybe the coaching staff, maybe the approach, maybe the leaders in the locker room, any of those things that it is, I'm outside looking in. I don't know for certain, but I don't think the drastic changes that clearly need to happen would happen, because I think they'd give themselves a pass if they made this crap-ass 12-team format. And they didn't, and I'm happy, and I have more hope for the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. This team, I don't, people, like I said, pulling up AP ranked wins, whatever. I don't care. They have not looked like a championship or even a playoff level team the entire season. They have not proven to, be consistent, really play like one of the best teams. There are some pretty glaring issues, and to miss out on the playoff your, first year with a new head coach, it sucks. I know, all the Bama fans out there really, really wanted the Tide to get in, but even if they had got in, there's no guarantee they would have won a game. Taking a trip to Ohio State, Austin, Texas, even South Bend, with how they've played on the road this season, I really wouldn't trust a lot of it. Just now they can take some time, reflect a little bit, try to get some young guys, some more experience in the bowl game. That's really what they're for. Kind of get a gauge on, where your team is at headed into next season, headed into the off season. Finish on a good note. That's really what you got to do, because if the disappointing loss, not making it into the playoff, and then if you go and drop a game against a 7-5 Michigan team that's been everything except exceptional this season, It's a really bad look. Doesn't give you a lot of confidence and growth heading into the next season. But if you want to get better, if you want to play at a championship level, it's just about doing the little things right and getting back to. I don't want to say just focusing on football because it's impossible to do that nowadays with everything going on in the world. But just try to keep your nose to the grindstone, stay focused, get out there, practice every day, work hard, train. Guys that are hurt, get healthy, do all the stuff. Like we said earlier, just focus on becoming better leaders, better young men, because that will help things get. This team was really young. Lots of really young players on this team, and so hopefully they've learned some things and can carry that forward into the next couple of seasons. But Aiden, before we get out of here, do you want to? I mean, the playoff bracket is out. Do you want to? You want to rip through it real quick? Pick some games.
Yeah, just real quick. I think you're absolutely right. If you put Alabama in SMU slot, we just saw Penn State play against Dan Lanning's team last night. Hilarious if people think that this team, the way it's played the last few weeks, stood a chance there. Clemson and Texas happening in Austin, Texas. This is going to be awesome. This is the one
it'll
thing
be good.
About the 12-team bracket, like the home games in the first round. This is going to be so good for the culture. This is going to be elite levels of fun on campus. That is something that I don't want anybody to think that I am being dismissive of here. But I'm going to go with Texas in a runaway, let's call it 31-10, and Arch Manning gets 2 rushing touchdowns.
Do you think Arch Manning was going to step into this game?
Yeah.
I mean,
did you see that? Hey, did you see the little trickery in the first quarter with the direct snap between the guy's legs? Like, oh my goodness!
I did.
And everybody's watched him put Arch Manning into the obvious quarterback rushing situations all year, and he goes, "Ooh, Kirby, I love that.
I got
so
something
much.
for you." Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer than people might expect. I mean, Cade Klubnik has taken steps forward this season. They've won some big games, lost some really tight games, but 3 p.m. kickoff in Austin, Texas, and there's always the weird chance that they get a blizzard that classic Texas ice storm that blows through that just absolutely ruins everything. But I'm still going to take Texas in this one, knocking off the Tigers. Tigers were outside the field heading into today, really yesterday, and I expect them to be knocked out in the first round.
The other note there, Cade Klubnik's been getting better. Steve Sarkisian might have a better defense than Kirby Smart. They played some incredible defensive football yesterday. That was one of the best football games that I've seen at the college level in years.
To that point, though, Carson Beck has been anything besides a first-round pick and has looked atrocious at times this season.
Honestly, give him 2 weeks with that backup quarterback taking the 1 reps in practice, and I don't know that Carson Beck being injured is going to matter at all for Georgia.
We'll see.
So moving on, Tennessee and Ohio State. Hardy, if you watched the selection show, you heard the note. I think it was McElroy possibly made it about, or maybe it was Herbstreit. I don't know. Made the point of like, hey, if Tennessee comes out and scores, and Ohio State doesn't for a drive or two, with the way the regular season ended and the way people feel about Ryan Day right now, it's not a good thing that Ohio State has a home game here.
No, it is not. I do think Tennessee is going to win this game. Their defense has been absolutely loaded. Ohio State's great roster, all that kind of stuff. The run. I mean, both of these teams, really just looking at their roster, super comparable. I really, with all the drama with Ryan Day, everything going on with that, I think Nico is a better quarterback than Will Howard. And
I
Josh
do think
Heupel,
you have a brain cell.
and Josh Heupel is I think he's a better coach than Ryan Day. I think so. I think big game, first playoff game for the Tennessee Volunteers since the playoff was established. I think they go into the horseshoe and they pull off the upset despite right now being listed as like a 6.5, 7 point underdog in that game. I think they're able to make some magic happen and get the job done.
Betting lines are done democratically. Betting lines are set based on where people place their money. And I think we've learned a thing or two about democracy given recent events and perhaps the intelligence of the unwashed masses. I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of thought into those lines. SMU and Penn State, I concur. I completely concur. I think that game might get out of hand, and I think it's Ryan Day's last time coaching at Ohio State University, not the
Very real shot.
So I'll actually be surprised if it isn't. But the thing I'll note here, anything about Alabama not getting an aside, is it not fitting that in the 12-team bracket for the first time and in the advent of the NIL era, the Mustangs are back?
Yeah.
Is that not how it should
be? It's laid out perfectly. It's as if God willed this into existence. I'm taking them to win this game. I don't trust James Franklin whatsoever. I think the Mustangs pull off the major upset in Happy Valley. It's a whiteout game. Penn State, they act like the whiteout game means something. When was the last time the last time they really won one of these things? They've talked about it for a while. It hasn't really lived up to expectations. I think SMU is underrated with how they play football. If Drew Aller plays like he did against Oregon, against SMU, then Penn State could win. But that game was an outlier. Aside from the USC game, that USC's defense was just, classic Lincoln Riley stuff. I think
that Penn State didn't prove that they can come out here and shut down the SMU offense potentially. You're right. The offense had an outlier game. The defense proved nothing. I shouldn't be making a face at you. That's not off base.
Yeah. And I think, and we'll get into the second round in a second. But yeah, I think SMU's they're gonna pull off that upset in Happy Valley. Get that big playoff win. Stir some pots for all the people that said Alabama should have been in the field in this game specifically. I think it's going to be, it'll be a really big. Probably it would be the biggest upset of the weekend, and I think that Mustangs are able to pull it off.
All right. Well, two things here. I don't think this game was ordained by God. I think it was ordained by ExxonMobil. And I think that you and I really have a hard time finding places we naturally disagree on this show. So I am going to go ahead and say that Penn State wins this game. But I do think it will be very competitive football, and I think it's going to be an excellent television product. And I am very happy that it's at 11 a.m. because the toddler and I get to watch it, and we don't get to watch primetime games in this house anymore because I'm unconscious at 8:45. Moving on to the Indiana-Notre Dame game, an in-state clash of maybe not Titans, but damn good football teams this year, and an opportunity for Kirk Cignetti to prove that they are legit and that they have staying power and that the things that happened at JMU didn't just happen because it was a, larger institution among small institutions. Hardy, I don't know. But my instinct does say Notre Dame.
This game is the standalone game the Friday night before. All eyes will be on the state of Indiana. I imagine this is going to be a really good showing in terms of just I wouldn't call this necessarily a rivalry game. I mean, I'm sure it used to be like a really big deal.
You could see one born here
because of an in-state clash. Right now, I'm gonna ride with Fighting Irish. Marcus Freeman has that playoff experience. And as much as I like this Indiana team, Signetti, what he's done, I don't think there's quite enough talent around that team to get them a win in front of touchdown Jesus.
I'm going to pause here.
But
have you figured out a way to make that lamp behind you not wobbly?
Which one? This lamp right here?
Directly behind. Yeah, I think my parents had that lamp for like 15 years, and it was never not wobbly.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just never noticed. I mean, like I have my laptop sitting on my lap right now, so like it might.
I'm not
move,
saying it's
like
wobbling.
every
I'm
single
not
time
saying
I
it's
take a
wobbling.
breath.
I'm just asking
No,
a
I mean,
question. I'm not noticing wobble or anything. I was
yeah.
curious.
No, it's no real issues that I've seen so far. Just put the wires on the very bottom of it, and so just wherever there's always like a little hole somewhere on the base that you can feed that wire through, and it stands up perfectly straight. It's a little crooked, but it's. I have not had any wobble issues. I like hardly ever turn it on, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's no problems for me so far. But the
That's
Indiana
crazy.
offense, I imagine, will have some problems against Notre Dame.
I think you'll see at least one lacrosse player score a touchdown in this game, and that's a good thing. I also think that while some people again are upset that maybe the Southeastern Conference didn't get the credit that they felt it deserved in its 3 lost teams and in this bracket, I'm not too young to remember a time when college football ran through cornfields rather than cotton fields, and I don't think that it's a bad thing that we might be giving some love to the cornfields again. So if we're both taking Notre Dame, let's say your SMU pick is what prevails here. We'll say that they're who plays Boise State. Tennessee comes out to play Oregon. Texas goes to Arizona State and potentially ends the Cinderella run for the Sun Devils. Let's pick these games. Hardy, Texas, Arizona State. How do you see this playing out?
Texas will be back in the Peach Bowl after just losing in Atlanta. I think they're going to want to not disappoint their fans that made the journey back. Arizona State has been solid this season. They can run the ball really effectively. But just in terms of pure talent, I don't know if it will be, their game plan, everything they've done this season will be enough to overcome a Texas team that's really going to be gunning to make it at least into the semifinal round. And I think Texas is able to really take care of business in this one. Maybe a 17-point difference if I had to pick a number.
Yeah, I as much as I love what I'm drawing a blank on the name. Dillingham, correct?
Dillingham, yeah.
Dillingham, yes. And the story has been incredible, and it's just been a giant middle
And
finger.
Scadabo's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
He's so dope, but like, yeah. I know what you're saying.
It probably comes crashing back to earth, in all reality. So again, look at that. We don't disagree. Tennessee and Oregon. This is difficult to call.
Yeah, it is difficult to call. I would argue that this Tennessee defense is the best defense that Oregon will have played the entire season. Ohio State's good. I don't think it's as good as this Tennessee defense. The game is not in Eugene. It'll be out at the Rose Bowl. I said it earlier in the show. I really do think Tennessee has a real chance to win a national title. And if I actually believe that, I'm going to ride with the Vols right here.
Okay. I'm not going to pick against Dan Lannon until he proves otherwise. Honestly, I do think the Vols have a very good team. I do think this will be a competitive football game. I do think Tennessee is going to have a really good showing, and I don't think they make it out of the second round. I think the Oregon Ducks have stayed up top all year, and they're going to show everyone why. I don't think they get bounced until they have to play the team that seems to think that one person can handle a bull on a sideline in the crowd.
Fair enough. Well, moving along, I have SMU Boise State here. You have Penn State Boise State here. I think that Ashton Genty's Heisman Trophy winning campaign ends on that very night. What is that? New Year's Day? No, New Year's Eve. The SMU Mustangs win 2 college football playoff games to really stick it to everybody that's been on Twitter today.
I love it.
And yeah, just living, pumping that oil money in. Ashton Genty has a fine game, but
okay.
I think the Mustangs, with some of the games that they've been in, some of the really close contests against ranked teams. SMU has the close game against Oregon, or Boise has the close game against Oregon, but SMU's played in some close games that they've lost as well. And I think SMU is going to be able to prevail in this one.
Be bold. Be bold here.
Yeah.
Do this. Call it Ashton Genty over 200 yards, over 2 rushing touchdowns, and a loss for Boise State anyway. Do it. Do it right now.
I'm not going to say over 200 yards. I do think you'll get 2 touchdowns in a loss, though. Let's say 125, 130 really? On the yardage, something like that. Yeah.
That's not even pedestrian for that man.
I know. If he runs for 200, they'll win. So I'm not.
Okay.
So I'm going to say, but yeah, I'm going to have SMU winning that one.
That's a little crazy to me because whether or not, SMU or Penn State ends up in this game, I'm picking Boise State.
That's fair.
I really, I think the kid's a difference maker. I think that, I don't think that either one of the teams that is potentially coming to play the Mountain West champion, I don't think that either one of the teams potentially coming to play the Mountain West champion is able to contain him to the point that they can win the football game. The guy's not going to be held under 200 yards. Maybe he only gets 1 rushing touchdown. I don't think it matters because when you possess the ball for, potentially 40 minutes of the game, because you can't stop their rushing attack.
Yeah, and they're good without him. They can throw the ball very well. Their defense is solid. Remains to be seen how crazy effective they are against another high power. Yeah, but it's fine. They looked really good against UNLV. But yeah, I'm taking SMU in this one for the pure points of spite. Just
I like that.
Just to make everyone upset.
That's what I love about you. That's shit right there. And then Georgia, right?
Yeah, I'm not picking against Georgia. They're going to beat Notre Dame, regardless of Gunnar Stockton, Carson Beck, Tupac Shakur, whoever's taking snaps for the Dogs. I think they're gonna beat Notre Dame. Moving up back to the top of the brackets. You've got
18-wheel round.
Yeah, you've got an Oregon-Texas matchup. I've got Tennessee-Texas.
Does it matter?
Well, I'm taking Tennessee because Texas against top-tier defenses this season has they just haven't. If I'm going to stick to what I've been saying, I really do trust Tennessee defense. They're not. If the game's not in Austin, Nico's worst game of the season was in Athens. They're not having to make a true road game, anything like that. So because of that, I think they're going to be able to pull off the upset. And I think that game, it'll either be at the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl. That could play into it if it's at the Cotton Bowl, bigger Texas crowd. But I still like.
It's not like that's a massive road trip for the folks in Knoxville either.
Yeah, it's not like too crazy. I mean, they will have just gone to the Rose Bowl, so
Yeah.
they're just making the trip back. But yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee in this one, despite everything in my being hating the Vols.
Yeah, I can sit with the burnt orange more than the inside of the pumpkin orange, and that is exactly what I would do in that scenario. I think that perhaps you simply think Tennessee's defense is on a level that I'm not ready to put them on yet. But
That's fair.
hey, I respect that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they've looked really, really good.
I think they have too.
And their rushing games, they control the clock really, really well
Yeah.
because like as good as Nico's been, and it's his first year as a full-time starter. Dylan Sampson's the best running back in the SEC this season. Having him is a really big factor to me.
And that's the sort of thing that allows you to go on a championship run with a young quarterback is elite rushing game, and also it really doesn't hurt when the safety net for any young quarterback is just tight ends, and they have good tight ends in Knoxville.
Yes, they do. They have receivers that are very capable. They can go on big runs, and they always have the power to just pull the trigger and get that Josh Heupel offense like really revved up. And so I like them in that game because as good as Texas has been against the best teams in the country, they haven't been nearly as good.
I think that this is going to be an Oregon versus Texas game, and I think that Texas wins it. I really do think that Steve Sarkisian is the coach on this side of the bracket that I trust to have his team the most prepared. Not that I don't trust Dan Lanning to, but I do think that, if you've got two elite coaches, I think it comes down to raw talent. And I think that more so than Steve Sarkisian has elevated the talent on his team to get them to this point, Dan Lanning has elevated the talent on his team to get them to the point that they would be at if they make it to the semifinal round, as I think that they will. And for that reason, I think that across the board, again, competitive, close football game, the things we want to see in the playoff level of college football. I do think that push comes to shove, Steve Sarkisian is the one that will make better decisions and have his talent more ready to go because he has better talent to work with. Not a knock on Dylan Gabriel and what they've got going on in Eugene, but I don't think that if anybody can see how my bracket's kind of shaping up, you're probably starting to see it. Texas makes it out and makes it to the championship round. So then
I'm not going to pick SMU again. Dogs take care of business. No,
I'm
no
not going to
question
pick Boise
whatsoever.
State over Georgia. Dogs take care of business.
Advancing to the championship game, you have Texas against Georgia. If Texas loses, it would be 3 times in a row that they lost to the Dogs this season. It's tough to beat a team 3 times. It's nigh impossible for it to happen, especially in how college football works. So I'm thinking that you're gonna lean on the Longhorns in the championship game.
I have no idea. I really have no idea. I mean, sure. Give me Texas. Flip a coin. Give me however it comes up. Because you're right. It is unheard of to beat the same football team 3 times in 1 year. Sometimes it happens at the NFL level, but very rarely. I can't think of an instance when it's happened at the college football level because I can't think of an instance where we've done silly stuff like this. So
what if I were to tell you that game would be happening in the same building that Texas just lost in? That they would have already won another playoff game in just a few weeks prior. Would that change your decision whatsoever? Playing. Kirby Smart talking about all the games on the road he had to play this season. 8 of them were in the state of Georgia, and one of them was a neutral site game in Jacksonville. Yeah,
I think these are the 2 best coaches in college football. I think these are the 2 best pools of talent in college football. I think that Georgia's home crowd really didn't matter in the SEC championship game. It came down to overtime, even though maybe it shouldn't have. But, I mean, gun to my head, yeah, Kirby Smart beats Steve Sarkisian a 3rd time this season. Regardless of who his quarterback is, because that's just kind of how it's gone. I don't have an answer I'm confident in here. I do think that the national championship game will be Texas versus Georgia. I don't really know who I would pick in that game, especially because whatever team will have played 3 football games to get there, and we don't know what their roster looks like.
Yeah, well, both. Yeah,
it's injured along the way.
Yeah. Right now, I have Tennessee and Georgia playing each other in the national championship game. The Vols will have had to go through an absolute gauntlet. Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas to reach this point. I don't think they're going to be able to win a 4th in that tough of a stretch of games. The wheels start to fall off the wagon a little bit. Maybe a left tackle or number 1 corner gets hurt at some point. Maybe a targeting call knocks someone out of a game late. Who knows?
Who knows if Dylan Sampson's there at that point? God forbid.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for them. Defense could get worn down a little bit, and Georgia's offense has started slow in pretty much every single game they played this season. But second half wins football games. They looked really good against Tennessee earlier this year, and that game was in Athens. But it was pretty definitive. I'll take Georgia to win the national championship. Let's call it 27-16. Sound like a fine number to me.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like a fine number to you, and I think it sounds like a fine number to me too. And I think we just both called the Georgia Bulldogs presumed national champions of college football.
Yes, we did. And we're not going to play this stupid little game where after they win it, Bama fans go, tooting their own horn about beating the national champion and they should have been in because they beat the national champion. I don't want to hear any of that.
Week 4, brother. Week 4.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Completely different team, and you almost blew it.
Beat Oklahoma. Beat Vanderbilt. Beat Tennessee. Look at the food on your own plate. Stop looking in your neighbor's backyard. Fix your own damn truck. Don't worry about what he brought home. And with that, Hardy, are we wrapping up this episode of Behind the Glass Sports?
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up. We can come back together. They play – Tide Hoops plays Creighton this upcoming Saturday or Sunday.
Nate Oates isn't scared of competition.
He's not. He's not afraid of some competition. We can reconvene. Your thoughts about that and how Bama fared. It's pretty tough non-conference stretch that they've gone through. Creighton had, they just beat number 1 team in the country, Kansas, a couple of days ago. So tough game. That one in Coleman Coliseum, back at home. The Tide
shout out to the SEC for owning the ACC.
Yes, shout out to the SEC for owning the SEC. Thank you to the Duke Blue Devils.
UNC.
Yes, and shout out to the Duke Blue Devils for knocking off the once undefeated Auburn Tigers. Should be fun. Should be a fun college basketball season.
I think it will be a fun college basketball season. I think it's already been a fun college basketball season.
I agree.
And I think that anyone who takes Greg Byrne's belly aching about canceling his future tougher out of conference games seriously, I've got some ocean property in Arizona for you. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.